Like just about everyone, I was over the moon excited for Cyberpunk 2077. I loved The Witcher 3, and as the gaming industry got bogged down in microtransactions and piecemealed the battle passes and live services, CDPR stood alongside id Software and Sony's first-party studios as the last paragons of games made by gamers and not maximized for profits. So naturally, I had myself a bit of a laugh when the game finally came out. By now, you know the truth. 2077 is an unoptimized mess, heavily undermining what otherwise would be a great game with disastrous Xbox and PlayStation ports. The PC has fared much better, but the decision by CDPR to hide the console ports until launch is scummy to say the least. So despite being on store shelves, the game will actually finish development somewhere between 6 months and a year from now. If you're one of the 8 million who pre-ordered, you're their beta tester. But when I think about the launch of the game and the state of gaming this past generation, I have to say that in all reality, the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 was the perfect way to cap off this generation of gaming. To understand why Cyberpunk got so hyped up in the first place, we have to go back to the 8th generation and also understand why CDPR's last game, The Witcher 3, is so beloved. After a few delays, Witcher 3 released in May of 2015 and it was breathtaking. A mature narrative and some of the best side quests and main quests ever in the video game.
The world where Eridan couldn't find you, what was it like?
People there had metal in their heads, waged war from a distance, using things similar to megascopes, and there were no horses. Everyone had their own flying ship instead.
It was a great value for the $60 price tag in a space that was gradually moving towards multiplayer-only games. From Titanfall to Battlefront, $60 games with a $50 season pass seemed to be the new normal, with a limited amount of content for the said $60.
And I'm so fucking glad that I didn't pre-order or get conned into the bullshit $110 version. Hell, the game is barely worth $60 at its current state. The multiplayer campaign mode itself isn't just disappointing, it's bad. It's half-assed. It's barely there. When I say that, it's bare bones barely there.
As the generation went on, things didn't get better, with season passes giving way to predatory loot boxes which gave way to battle passes, or in some cases a combination of the three. Witcher 3 stood as a reminder of what games should be. A $60 game with quality, substantial content, and 2 paid expansions with another 50 plus hours of content alongside free DLC. The game wasn't going through development and saying it was free content and a new update. It was a complete experience out the box with even more available for a very reasonable price. Many games in the 8th generation launched in messy states, didn't deliver on the marketing and underwhelmed audiences, and overall could have been a good game if not for the fact that they were clearly rushed out the door in order to capitalize on pre-orders and hype. They would get support over a year or so, patches and additions to the game that were added in features promised for launch, and ultimately they would fix a lot of the issues with the games. But buying a game at launch was basically paying full price to be a beta tester, and in about a year the actual game would be complete. So while The Witcher 3 has its issues and in fact had a bit of a buggy launch, it remained an outlier in a generation rife with multiplayer focused piecemealed games. It was rare for a multi-platform game to be so consumer friendly, and in turn the game ended up being the bar for which all other games should aspire to reach. So it should come to no surprise that their next project, Cyberpunk, was as hyped as it was. We were told they were going to follow off what they did with The Witcher 3, free next-gen upgrades and DLC alongside the paid expansions. The team had been developing the game since 2012 with creator Mike Pondsmith. They had shipped the game on the current hardware and knew what it could and couldn't achieve, and the marketing was fantastic with great trailers and some amazing original music, especially the samurai music. Best music in the game. This is not opinion, this is fact. And, of course, a lot of transparency in regards to the game's delays in development.
So that was a fucking lie.
Needless to say, it wasn't ready. The game's current state on Xbox One and PS4 is nothing short of an embarrassment. It's clear the game had at least another 6 months to go in the oven. Beyond the irony of a Cyberpunk game being released to appease investors by bad management, the game's launch is everything we saw this past generation bundled together. While the game has no microtransactions and only 2 editions available for purchase, it's simply unfinished. Bad graphical fidelity, texture issues, bugs upon bugs, and unstable frame rate, the game is barely playable in its current state on consoles, and the corpos knew it. So the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk really was the best way to end this console generation. Instead of being another stand against anti-consumer practices, CDPR fully divulged into them. Shady early reviews which weren't granted console keys, missing features in AI, released in order to capitalize on pre-orders, a nearly unplayable console port unless you're on the next generation of consoles or the pro versions of the base consoles, but the game will eventually get patched and we'll fix it in the coming months. January, guys. And a once beloved studio burned their reputation to the ground. Cyberpunk was the chosen one, but instead of reminding us of the best gaming has to offer. It instead reminded us of all we've gone through in the last generation. Unfinished releases that have players waiting months, if not years, for the complete version of the game to be released, despite a lengthy development time, ultimately undermining what would otherwise be a fantastic game. It may not have a season pass or microtransactions, but in all other areas, Cyberpunk's launch perfectly encapsulates the 8th generation and serves as a dangerous look at what the 9th has to offer.
You don't believe in no fate, every day digging the grave, stepping up here with the snakes, city of dreams, city of gang. You don't believe in no fate, I might just dig up your grave, stepping up here with a gang, city of dreams, city of gang, 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 gang. City of dreams, living your grave, you live in your grave. City of dreams, city of gang, 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 gang. City of dreams, live in your grave, you live in your grave. City of dreams, city of